Think of your grandpa's old pocket knife. Worn, dirty, but always ready to cut an apple or a fishing line. I'm sure that trusty old knife looks something like this, and that you have fond memories of it. Knives have been around for millions of years and evolved side by side with humans. The earliest edge tools we know of are about 3 million years old and predate the emergence of our genus. An anthropological site in Kenya called Lomikwai preserves stone tools made by Australopithecus or Kenyanthropus. Over time, the art of knapping stone tools into sharp blades would improve and develop. These stone items were used both as tools and ritualistic symbols. Beautiful decorations were early additions to stone blades, showing that humans had an affinity for the aesthetics of knives almost from the beginning. For example, the Jebel El Arak knife is a magnificent artifact from Egypt, dated between 35 and 3200 years ago. This knife was crafted with love and care and designed to be a beautiful status symbol. The first metal blades were made of copper, but the poor qualities of this metal soon led to the first ever alloy, bronze, a mix of copper and tin. Throughout history, knives have changed and evolved to meet the needs of human populations as tools, weapons, or artwork. The latest metallurgic and technologic innovations of each era built on the inventions that came before. Our need to perfect humanity's oldest tool led to the creation of steel and the explosion of metalworking artistry. To this day, knives continue to evolve and develop to match the needs and tastes of knife users around the world. But no matter how complex, how advanced, or how useful our modern knives become, there persists a deep and compelling interest in the knives of yesteryear. Welcome to Gideon Stuff. Today, we're talking about modern traditional knives. Over the past few years, there's been a trend in the knife world to resurrect old designs and repurpose them for the aesthetics of the modern knife guy or gal. You may be familiar with offerings from companies like Jack Wolf, Carbon, or Finch, and others we will discuss soon. But before we do that, let's define the term modern traditional. As stated in the introduction, knives are older than our genus. Let that sink in. Modern humans have been around for about 300,000 years. Homo habilis, meaning handyman, was the first member of the genus Homo, and they first appeared about 2.3 million years ago. The oldest known knife is over 3 million years old. Because of this, there's a huge collection of objects that may be called a traditional knife. Obviously, the earliest knives are seldom called traditional. Instead, prehistoric tools are colloquially referred to as Stone Age or primitive blades, though the word primitive is relative only to what we have today. For our purposes, traditional knife refers to knives whose design can be traced to origins in the late 17th or early 18th century, all the way through to the middle or early latter quarter of the 20th century. I believe this is the most widely accepted definition among knife enthusiasts, whether they know it or not. Today we are going to limit our discussion to folding knives. The reason is because I have not reached a personal consensus on the proper diagnostic characteristics of modern traditional fixed blades. Some fixed blades are instantly recognizable as classic or traditional, such as the Nessmuck and Bowie. However, the shape of many fixed blades differs very little over history. Take this Demco Free Rein, for example. This knife has a very modern sheath and is built using modern materials and methods, but the overall design could fit into multiple historic time periods with minor adjustments to the materials. Condor makes knives that call back to classic looks, but often take liberties in design. In a way, most or all fixed blade knives could be classified as modern traditionals. Either that, or we would have to define very strict criteria that I am not going to attempt to do here. The first folding pocket knife was created around 600 BC, and it set a precedent for knife design in the future centuries. The Romans and Vikings widely used folding knives for years and years as well. These early folding knives were non-locking friction folders, or clasp lock folders in the case of the Vikings, but I do not include these articles under our definition of traditional knives. This is because there is a high amount of variability between these designs, even among knives made during the same period or by the same people. There is no good way to define a standard. The penny knife was first popularized around 1650. Made in Sheffield, England, these simple friction folders were common tools for the general population and were perhaps the first example of a mass-produced civilian knife in history. The mass production allowed for the proliferation of identical models with a little bit of variation between models. For example, some of them were equipped with twist locks, very similar to modern-day Opinel knives, a brand that can trace its origins back to the 1890s. These knives set a standard by introducing the idea of a specific pattern or knife design made in large quantities and distributed to a wide population. The mid to late 17th century also saw the invention of the slip joint, a mechanism that would lead to an absolute explosion of knife design. Today, slip joint and modern traditional are often used interchangeably, erroneously in some cases. In 1891, a Swiss manufacturer called Victorinox created a knife for their military that would go on to become the enduring Swiss Army knife that we all know and love. In the United States, many slip joint designs were popularized over the course of 200 years. These included the Moose, Peanut, Barlow, Stockman, and the ever-loved Trapper, among many others. All of these designs are still made to this day. The modern traditional can thus be defined as a knife made in the modern era using modern methods and materials, but harkening to an older traditional pattern. Recreations, reproductions, replicas, and art knives exist in a category of their own and will not be discussed here. I also want to stress that not all slip joints are modern traditionals. This real steel Solaris, for example, is a modern slip joint, but not a modern traditional. Some modern traditionals are very similar to their historic inspirations, like knives made by Case and Rough Rider. Others take traditional patterns and give them a very modern twist, such as Jack Wolf and Finch. These knives are very popular among both collectors and users. There is a thriving market for the modern traditional. But why? Some people may argue that traditional pocket knives are better tools and that they don't make them like they used to. That may be true in some cases, but I think the fascination runs much deeper than utility. I think the answer is nostalgia, and this Rough Rider Swell-Center Whittler is a perfect example. This knife is not closely based on any historical pattern as far as I can tell, but when I hold it and use it, I feel connected to an era that ended long before I was born. The feel of the action, the weight, the bolsters, and the natural tones of the handle all feel classic. There's a satisfaction that comes with carrying this. Yeah, modern knives are bigger and faster and fancier, but I don't care. I carry this knife because I like the nostalgia. Simplicity is beautiful. The clean lines of a Barlow, the snap of a back spring, even the feeling in hand can all trigger a recollection of days beyond our own. Take those elements of classic simplicity and mix them with modern materials like S90V steel and fat carbon, and you end up with something like a Jack Wolf. I don't own any Jack Wolves, but I understand the popularity of them. The draw of modern performance mixed with classic design gets me excited as well. In a world of rapidly progressing technology and increasing digitization, I think many people long for the simplicity of bygone decades. We're exposed to so much innovation that the appeal of more primitive tools has ironically increased. There is something comforting and familiar about the tools of our forebears, and it extends past the world of pocket knives. This all reminds me of another modern traditional, one that isn't a knife. My Ruger Wrangler. This firearm is based on the Colt single-action Army, but even someone unfamiliar with guns would never mistake this for a gun from the 1880s. It has a Cerakote frame and synthetic scales, for example. But a more knowledgeable person would recognize that this has some functional differences from the original Colt as well. But this gun gives me the same feeling as a classic Western revolver. Every time I wear this gun, you better believe I feel like riding into the town of Agua Fria one fine day. Shooting this gun is so much fun because it reminds me of days gone by. And honestly, I think this is the most gorgeous a handgun can look. It's just sexy. I think the past calls to us. Every person in every time period is connected in some way, and I think we unconsciously tap into that. And I think that connection is expressed through what we are attracted to. I think modern cars are ugly as sin, for example, but classic cars are absolutely gorgeous. The lines and curves catch my eye and are much more pleasing than the cookie cutter cars that we have today. Modern cars that look good, in my opinion, have elements that remind me of the classics. Similarly, many of the design features of old knives are still beautiful today. Bolsters are a hallmark of traditional knives, and they're still popular today, and have been even modified into a locking system. Materials used in classic knife handles are still sought after today, such as wood, bone, and ivory. Obviously, I love modern knives. New locking mechanisms and fancy blade steels are wonderful things. But I cannot deny the appeal of the classics. Some of my favorite knife designs blend the contemporary with the classic. Knives like those designed by Enrique Pena, for example, or Finch knives, or this Boker Bonfire. This knife is based on a single-bladed trapper, which it strongly resembles. We have a steel bolster and a clip point blade with a nail nick, but we also have a ball bearing pivot, a front flipper, and a pocket clip. I absolutely love this. It's the best of both worlds, modern convenience and classic beauty. One day, the knives that we consider modern may become a new generation's classics. When that day comes, I'm sure these designs will still be sought after and remembered fondly. The past never dies. It sticks with us and shapes us into who we are. You and I may never achieve immortality, but the tools we invent will endure as long as there are people to remember them. And I think that's why we're obsessed with modern traditionals. I think that's why we love them, why they strike a chord with us. Not only do they remind us of the good old days, but they remind us where we came from. They connect us to the past. And in a way, they connect all of us to each other. There's a fascination that will never go away as long as humans are still using tools. Hey guys, thank you for watching that video. This one was a little bit different than videos I've done in the past, as you can tell. And I want to know what you guys thought. This definitely took a lot more work. Writing the script involved research, and instead of a script, I actually kind of wrote a little essay. And so that took a couple of weeks, and I haven't even got to the editing stage yet. Filming was very fun. There were lots of mess ups, and so maybe I'll make a blooper reel for you guys. But yeah, I want to know, did you like this video? Should I do more? And if so, what are some topics you want to see covered? I'd love to do some historical dives into the knife world. But until then, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, comment below, and subscribe. You know the drill. I've been Gideon, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.